Keep going on that since we're switch topics, so we don't have to. Sorry.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. And then. Okay.
So I'll tell you the same like we did last time.
Yeah. No, that should be good, because it'll take a minute.
Were you at the game last night? And did you take UVX home or did you just walk across the UVX platform?
I read because each side of the
I said, went right there. Yeah.
How are you? Which, well, it was a good game.
We have to.
Yeah, freeze. Yeah, it's.
I'm giving everyone a 30-second warning because we're gonna try and start as close to on time as you can. Yes. A discussion about lighting that we're going to see today.
Nice. I like lighting, I'm all in favor.
We discussed it, we're gonna not go over the meeting stuff in 2000 anymore, we're gonna do it in the actual meeting.
Okay.
So we don't keep having all our discussions here, we actually have a meeting where we really should be having it.
Was that?
Yeah, so we'll start using that time, we might read over things. And,
Okay. That's kind of, is that the way it's supposed to be? Is that the same thing with city council actually?
well, that's city council does it that way too, right? They take care of business and they learn things and they have work
No,
sessions.
they discuss everything, and they discuss everything.
Well, okay.
How are
So, but you know,
Better when I get to see it.
as long as we answer all our questions.
How'd your day go with that move? That's crazy.
And then we're also doing
Get a
some,
lot of people.
yeah, I mean, kind of a few things and then we started having some training on motions and then
Yeah, it's kind of hard when
we
you.
didn't have really a lot. I mean, the
Well, and then
business was
I
just.
know him well.
He will join us for the main meeting on Zoom. No, okay.
He's not doing it.
Yeah, he said it would be for the regular
It was
meeting,
just-
not the meeting.
Oh,
So, okay.
you do a heck of a job.
I'm gonna go ahead and call our pre-meeting to order and let's get started so we can have ample time to discuss lighting. So I'm sure we're all just super excited.
So any questions on the Grapevine Court preliminary plat that you want to talk about? Okay, then I would turn the time over to
Let's
Matt.
go to the next slide, right? I want to talk about.
We have, I guess we could do that.
So,
Yes.
so we have a couple of ideas. One is to take a tour of the Sierra. I've talked to Adam Robertson there. He's willing to take host us. And if you guys are interested in doing that as part of our pre-meeting in the future.
Yeah.
Also an idea of whether or not we want to tour some of these projects that are either under construction or completed construction to see what was approved and then what it turns out to be in the end.
Yeah.
So I just wanting to know if you guys are interested in those types of tours. We'd be glad to set those up. It might, take
I am.
I think we all are interested.
So both, either
Yeah.
Sarah and,
Both, yeah,
Yeah.
they're both, yeah.
okay, we'll work on that.
Okay, thank you.
We'll turn the time over to Matt.
All right.
You just want the cable or?
Is Matt going to light up our lives today?
Well.
And he's gonna do it until 10 after the end, like we did last week, so Gary can have time for some training.
And I'm getting together. Just a second. You turn the lights off.
Yeah, well. We actually want to time this.
I'm still minding nothing here, it's moving. Well, that's just. I'll have to look at it in a different way.
How many more lighting, but you have.
What?
How many more lighting, but you have.
Here all day.
We'll give you guys more time to think of additional ones, and we'll see how many we can get by the end of the meeting. I worked at a home automation company, and so we had a lighting department, all the light switches and 50 different kinds of light bulbs and stuff, and they had those jokes all over the wall.
Maybe you'll need some help to give this presentation right here, Michael.
Yeah, I took our kids on a road trip. We crossed a dam and all we had were dam jokes for the next 45 minutes.
My dad was a damn engineer.
I lived in a damn house.
Did you buy a damn hat?
Yeah.
That's my favorite, it said damn hat.
I like all the Holland America damn shit jokes.
That's what.
Ready?
I am ready.
Then go forth.
Okay.
Illuminate us. Oh, sorry.
All right. Well, thanks for having me back. And let's just recap where we left off last time. We talked a little bit about goals and language and definitions. Recap any of those definitions, we can go back and look at them again, but overall, I think where we left off was just going through the definitions or giving a sort of a scope of issues around lighting. We're gonna look at a few of the pictures that we didn't finish last week. Probably start from the top, just because we're sort of rushing it there at the end. These are pictures of different places in Orem. And
you took the pictures, didn't you?
I did. 4 to 5:30 a.m. I'm dedicated.
You are.
And and then our goal, I think here is we'll just have some discussion about where the planning commission wants to go, how important you think these issues are, and then maybe if we have some time, we'll start diving into one of the first tactics that we can start looking at to regulate or help solve some of these potential issues. I use the word issue and potential. Issues not either good or bad. And then potential is really comes down to priority of the planning commission and determine where they want to see this discussion take shape, if anywhere. So as we looked at these photos, and if you want to weigh in at any point, just jump right in. I won't be offended if I get cut off. We see a couple issues. These are all non-shielded wall pack lights. Their intent is to light up a large area. You see in this loading dock area, they haven't really thought about how to sufficiently light up the backside or the middle of this parking, loading area. And so they've tried to flood that area. You see how it can create glare, trespass issues into other neighboring properties. You also see a spectrum of color choices here. And we're not going to get into the merits of color choices yet, but you can see the difference.
May not hurt if you tell us where these are because we travel past them and.
I'm gonna have to go from memory.
Okay.
These
Yeah, I
are,
can't remember.
I took these actually a little while ago, but this is, I believe, behind Smith's here.
That's what
across
I
the street. And generally these photos are gonna head south on State Street, and we're gonna start heading west along the Parkway. And then I do circle back to some properties that are north of the city center on State Street. So I think I can remember most of them if I can't.
So are these businesses required to have this lighting? Is this a requirement, or are they doing it or is it required?
Probably both. There's some that is required. There's some that's obvious additions that they've added throughout the year because whatever motivation they may have had. And I think a future discussion will outline exactly what our code does and does not require. Right now, again, we're just getting sort of a sense of what we're seeing out there. And if we want to continue this discussion, we'll then lay out, okay, this is what the code is requiring. This is maybe where the code is deficient, or we could change it. But I don't have a slide for that today, I'm sorry. Similar, this is just south of that, this bank drive-through, and these are just quite bright. So we have probably an over illumination issue. We'll see it from the other side in a minute. In addition
It's hard
to-
to tell what's around it because it's so
Yeah,
prominent.
this is where over lighting can create too much contrast and that you get hot spots and dark spots. So yeah, please weigh in on your observations. I'd like you to do that because I'm not gonna catch everything, and that's very good insight, Mike. Thanks. This is just looking the other way. And you see that wall, there are trees. I think the trees substantially help during the when there's foliage. But not completely. During the winter, it's gonna be a lot brighter in these people's backyards. And you can see how much light is hitting those trees. So imagine how much is gonna be going through those trees when the foliage drops off. Okay, that's that same bank drive-through. And you see how much light is hitting that wall. And it's maximum security prison lighting right there. And probably more than they need. So again, this comes to an issue of trying to get the right amount to do the job. Just another wall pack. And a lot of times these wall packs are used to try and overcome deficient lighting or deficient lighting design elsewhere on the site. They feel something's dark, they don't want to go out and construct a pole. So they get a wall pack and just try and flood the whole area. That creates other issues though. Okay, now you actually see this parking lot light. It's not the worst, but the higher the lights go, you also get sort of spillage, and sometimes that's unavoidable. But I actually like this photo because you see the downlighting on the building and how it's fully cut off. It's lighting the areas. It's actually doing a pretty decent job lighting that walkway. And then the street light is lighting that front yard. And so could that parking lot lighting be toned down a bit? Probably. I'm not the lighting engineer.
What
gut reaction.
recourse do neighbors have? Just complaining to the city, or do we get complaints about lighting?
They don't get a lot.
Direct glare is a violation of the ordinance, so if it's directly glaring into your house, we'll make them shield. If it's commercial to commercial, we typically don't have a lot of complaints, because they're lighting their other parking lot, they don't really care. But residential people do have issues, we do have ordinances against that.
So I won't talk about all of these, you'll see common themes. This one I actually thought was a better example of how you light an area appropriately. These are wall mounted, but they're full cutoff. And so you see how there is less glare, and we get more as we get closer to the fixture, but that's at some point unavoidable. As we get further away, we don't have the glare issues. You can see as we get further down that road, that glare just keeps on tapering off. And it's lighting the area that needs to be lit, the doors, the parking areas, and even out to the parking lot. So
Yeah, it's directed for good purpose, right? It's
Yeah.
just not
yeah,
throwing it out there.
this is a very, I don't know if they were thoughtful about it or they just happened to hit the right solution here, but I thought this was a good example of how lighting can be installed in an appropriate way. Here's definitely, we have an over illumination. This is a car lot. I'm sure they're concerned about security, but it's, my personal opinion, way more light than they need to do the job. And this has become a complaint with the residents on the backside.
Well, there's lights in the way in the back of the parking lot, so it goes right into the, I mean, it's like,
It's on University Parkway, is that?
yeah.
This one's on state, yeah.
This gentleman had a lot of tires and things stolen in the back. So rather than coming into the city, he just changed out all the light bulbs to brighter, thinking brighter is better.
That's the one next to AutoZone.
So when it was originally built, the lights weren't obviously as bright.
But you go in the people's backyard and it's like daylight.
So we spent, it's probably been about a year and a half or so, we spent on site at night with the property owners in the back. We spent some time with our lighting guy. We had them shield several of the lights next to their
One time
homes.
they moved.
Yeah, then they ended up moving.
Oh, the people that complained moved, or was that bad?
Yeah, was that
Is that the thing?
You can see the homes, I think in the back, you can see the homes there. So these are shining this way, there were some on State Street shining the other way, which was, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a legitimate issue at Orem because a lot of our business is back up on the homes, like that's
Mhm.
just how we are, straight down State Street and along University Parkway.
So those lights have to be shielded by code.
So currently under the code, they have to be shielded and
Yep.
not spilling.
Doesn't mean you'll have some light spillage, but you won't have direct glare shining in your face type of thing.
Another view of the same site looking along State Street, you can see Midtown 360 across the street there. The goal is not talking about billboard or sign lighting for this discussion. If we want to talk about that, that's great, but I think it's a different topic. I thought this was actually had a couple good things. Now, one thing we'll discuss more in detail later is pole height. So a lot of times we see commercial developments come in and they put extra tall poles in. And they do that really to save money. Because if you had those poles lower, we'd have less glare. Plus, plus combined with appropriate fixtures like shielded or cut off. If you have a lot of shorter poles though, that's gonna be a little more difficult, maybe not just to install because you have more materials to outlay on. But maybe they're concerned about other things like snow removal in the parking lot or islands or stuff. But pole height can have an effect on this issue. I think we actually see some good lighting there back in this new parking structure. Now, obviously it's a very well lit parking structure. But the way that the structure's designed, the ceiling's designed, that light is not spilling into our eyes. It's well lit, but it's not glaring.
In that last picture, are those city fixtures along State Street? Right at the edge? Are those the green
Yes.
overhang ones? Okay. Just labeling his lights.
I can't quite see, but yeah, possibly.
The one up closest, but one far back, you see,
Yeah, the one on closest.
because it has a flat.
Yeah, the brightest one at the top there, that's part of the park. Another wall pack. But again, here's the contrast. On the back side is probably the original lighting to their right of this image. And it's doing its job the way it was intended to do it. Somebody came out and solved this other one, and this is pretty glaring. This is in direct line of sight of traffic too, as you go. This is the back side of the.
BF.
Yeah.
Who's there now?
Mhm, yeah, Burlington Coat Factory, that whole shopping center.
Yeah. Grand Central.
It's the same location, just different vantage point. Same building, just further south. This is actually probably the backside of Burlington right here. Looking the opposite direction. Now, we have homes across the street here, or duplexes, or some residential. And that's just shining right into their homes and their front yards. Oh, yeah, this is the. Let's see if that'll work again. Just illumination of their front yards. More examples along that stretch. Now, this is one of the brightest examples I saw. On one of these back loading dock areas, just completely inundating this residential area. In this one, I took the example, even though it has a good cutoff system, they're so high. It creates a lot of spillover. Yeah, contrasting of cutoff versus not cutoff. I actually felt like this was a pretty good gas station example. They're lighting up their area, but they're not excessively overlighting the surrounding areas. Mostly because of the way they've designed those lights to recess into the canopy structure. Another example of a car lot, probably overlit to a degree. One thing we haven't really talked about is just timing controls too. Sometimes we maybe light in times of the day that it's really not needed. This was a residential example that I drove into. You can see how the car ports here are actually great shields. The trees above them are pretty dark, and so I bet you those upstairs don't suffer too much, but the downstairs, you can see in this adjacent, just the way these are designed. And I'm not sure what to do about this one exactly, but how it's lighting that window and creating a lot of glare for the people in the drive and parking area. And so
Maybe that one theft maybe or something.
probably a slightly different fixture could resolve a lot of that, but. All right, so that's just some examples. What is the impact? Flagstaff, Arizona started implementing lighting ordinances back in the 1970s. They updated that code substantially in 1989. Cheyenne, Wyoming did not. They've just sort of gone the typical route like most communities. So this is from a study done, I forget the actual year, I wish I put it on here. But they determined in this study, this is a journal study too, so oh, thank you. Showing that they expected 43% of the light to be creating sky glow or upglow, and they determined without the code. Sorry, I'm just gonna read this. So we show the adoption of the 1989 lighting code has reduced the growth of Flagstaff sky glow from expected 43% without the code to just 17%, while the population has increased by about 25%. If all the lighting in Flagstaff could be brought within the standards of the 1989 code, Flagstaff sky glow could be reduced to 64% of the 2003 value. If all the lighting were fully shielded, total output would be reduced to 47%. So this is two photos that came from the study. One is of Cheyenne, which is about 8,000 less people, and measuring the actual luminosity output of those areas versus Flagstaff. You can actually see the visible Milky Way pretty prominently in that upper photo. You can see it a bit there in Cheyenne's, but you can just see how overwhelming the rest of the sky glow is for that area. This next slide is sort of a different perspective. Again, 8,000 less people here in Cheyenne, yet they're from satellite photography, their outputs just quite a bit more. Now, there is a different sort of landscape here. Flagstaff is more mountainous versus Cheyenne's a lot more flat, but I think it illustrates the point.
What else is a hotspot, Cheyenne?
Yeah.
What's the impact of sky glow on, I guess, why do we care about sky glow other than just?
Yeah, I wouldn't normally make sky glow the primary issue. I just used it as an example of how lighting regulations have affected overall light output. Sky glow, though, if you back up and say, okay, let's just not even say the word sky glow. What are the issues? Well, we have the light trespass issues. We have the glare issues. We have some potential health impact issues with sleep cycles, and that's the whole reason.
I live.
Yeah, so those are all the reasons. This is just illustrating.
UVU library every night, the lights never go off, never.
Yeah. So you get it.
365, I understand.
So I only use sky glow as an illustrative concept to say how Flagstaff's light ordinances did measurably reduce over several decades, 40, 50 years. Their impact versus a community that did not intentionally address those, at least at the same level.
Regulations, how much brighter would it be than Cheyenne? Because they would have grown, but there are, you know,
Yeah.
because they would have had nothing holding them back. They would have done what they wanted.
I think it depends, there's a lot of oil companies, I mean, they just have different industries there, but.
Sure.
I know, I mean.
Again, there's a lot of nuances
yeah.
there.
I get that.
Here's an example from our backyard in Spanish Fork. You know, the last decade, they've had a lot of commercial expansion there right at the freeway interchange. And you can see from 2012 to 2021 how that has increased. So again, I'm not saying either right or wrong, it's just whether how you address lighting regulations can impact actual output. Now, why there is an argument to be made why beyond the other health safety issues that sky glow was an important issue for the state is that a lot of the state's astrotourism does rely on not having that spillage. And you can see from here, you know, there's quite a sizable distance between Fort Collins and Cheyenne or Flagstaff and Phoenix, and you can see how those light domes, that's what they actually call them, light domes, can bleed over into other areas and start causing problems. So
We have the most.
not our primary issue here, but you know, being good community members in the state, if we want to encourage that industry, yes, addressing that may help in the long term. Maybe not the short term, but
You have pictures of ours to compare to these others?
I did, but they're not very pronounced. Again, we're only going back a decade here, and we haven't had substantial growth
Yeah.
in the last decade. I can bring those next time, just showing you a little bit.
How do we compare to similar sized cities? Do you remember?
Well,
I could dive into that for next
That's okay.
discussion. Yeah, I don't have answers on that today.
Utah has the most black sky kind of as of any of the lower 48. Like we have a ton of it. Now, a lot of that's down in southern Utah where there's nothing there.
Speaking of the whole state. not
Yeah.
just-
But as our populations grow and our light impact grows, that will bleed out into our rural communities.
I think 74%
Even
of
with
the state
mountains.
is public land,
Yeah, that's it too.
66% federal and
All right, so focusing maybe more back on the immediate, okay, how does this impact Orem residents? There are pretty much about 6 major tactics that could be used to address some of these issues. And they include requiring full cutoff or fully shielded fixtures. Maybe imposing height limitations on pole height. Capping the overall amount of illumination that's outputted from the lamp source. Spectrum control, which again comes back to that red versus blue light spectrum that we measure in kelvins. Automatic timers may be effective in that, you know, after a certain business hour, so much light isn't needed. Those can just, rather just leave them on all night. And you know, photometric plans is a tool that planners can use as we go through the plan review process to show compliance with various tactics. But before we get into those, I just want to gauge timing.
What's the difference between the red and the black there?
Oh, that was just a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah,
No
apologize about that. And it was then turned into a graphic and it wasn't easy to convert back. Before we go into tactics, I think we probably should start diving into those next time. But before we do that, I just want to turn it back to you. What do you feel this is on the priority level? Is this an issue that we should be addressing as a city? Should we be developing discussion further, setting goals and objectives that the planning commission thinks important? Or is this more of a, maybe we just make some minor tweaks to the ordinance and just do some more enforcement on problem properties? What's your feelings and reactions to this preliminary discussion?
Oh, you're yours.
You wanna hear mine?
Absolutely.
What I was gonna say first though is like, yeah, planning commission members, let's discuss, let's focus it in on us a little bit. But like, I guess for me, I do think dark sky and overabundance of light are issues that can be addressed. I think that my brain tries to break it down into categories, and so not so much this, like we've got residential lighting for single family homes, we've got residential lighting for apartment complexes and townhomes. Having lived in both, lighting needs and necessities and situations are vastly different in both of those. We've got commercial needs and not just what's on their own lot, but how we protect the residents around it. So I think I start thinking in categories like that. So that's kind of where I'm like, okay, and addressing each one of those is going to be, there's gonna be different needs and there's gonna be different whatever. But I do think, personally, I do think it's something to worth discussing and investigating and seeing what can be done to maybe help.
Just a quick comment on that.
Yeah.
Certainly, we would break this down into categories, residential versus commercial zoning and Colorado Heights, we worked on this, we did that very thing. And it may be a decision that maybe the priority is just really more focused on commercial and then not touching residential.
Well, and I think it would be prioritizing those, so where do we start at each, but we have a lot of information. We have a lot of context of things and directions we can go, but I don't think it helps to just have a sky's the limit. I think we have to pick in our discussion, say, let's just start with commercial or whatever we choose and say, okay, what can we do there? But I just
Well, I was
go
gonna-
around, Jim.
One of the issues that I think is important is the, not just the brightness of the lights, but how it affects safety and security. I mean, we talked about the theft of tires. So I don't know how many years ago it was that Orem went with the lighting program where they've got these green light poles
I have questions about that.
and there's one right by my home. Fortunately, our bedrooms are not by that light, but our neighbors is. And so the question is, if you were to ask them, would they prefer to have the light? I think they would, just from a security standpoint. And how much of an impact does lighting have relative to reducing crime?
Sure.
That's another category, I think. City street lighting is definitely another category we can discuss.
Yeah, that would
Because
be,
that's one of those things I've noticed, like, because he asked us to like pay attention and then like a little bit I've been able to pay attention. I know State Street has the downward facing ones. And they have one type of light, and I think 8th North has those too.
All
Don't
commercial
quote me.
streets typical house.
Yeah, but all the residential streets have the full 100.
The top is actually dark sky compliant, so
They are.
the acorn part is lit, but the top part, it does not shine up.
how is it determined,
So it goes this way instead of.
how is it determined where they would be placed and what kind of lights would be used?
Approximately 200 feet apart. So the lighting plan was done in older neighborhoods based on that and based on where they could get easements and where they can. You notice they're typically endpointing across the street from each other, but sometimes they'll be same side of the street just because it was topography or something like that, would not be able to.
Who planned that? Who laid that out? Was it an outside
City,
party?
there's a parking division that actually, our light division got parking.
So if the comments regarding those lights generally been of a positive nature, of course, people, if it's positive, won't say anything, but if they've got a complaint, then
That's
it
about,
would.
probably 3 or 4 years ago, we actually changed the lights out to LEDs that cut the energy costs quite significantly. The lights are a little wider though, so it's a little brighter. But it does comply with dark sky compliant as far as the top goes, but it still illuminates the sidewalks and other things. If my bedroom, when in the wintertime, I can see the one across in the backyard to the cul-de-sac, which we just put dark shades, and walk it that way, but we do have some complaints, obviously, but typically it does serve the purpose of lighting the streets.
So the impetus to put the lights in the first place was because of
Safety,
safety.
really more pedestrian safety, not necessarily.
Saved me $3,000 for
Yeah.
shades.
So there are some places that I've noticed where I wish they had a light, rather than have too many. There's
Typically, one of the line items of our review of both commercial and residential is street lighting. So they are required to bond and actually pay for the poles, and the city actually installs the lights. So that they pay the cost for us to do that.
yeah, interesting.
So.
Right?
So, the one thing I'm wondering, because I don't know what all the ordinances are, so I don't know. you know, it's hard to say what we need if we don't know what we have.
Sure.
But I do think it's an important issue. I like dark skies, you know, I think that that's part of an enjoyment in life, right? The more light pollution you have, the less likely you're gonna enjoy the night sky. So I think it's a worthwhile thing to consider. It is important because it does affect people, you know, I would say, I know a couple lights that are painted flat on the backside.
I just wanted to ask back and ask you a question. Of those kind of categories I listed, where do you think is commercial or residential or?
I think residential's more affected to the people who live, you know, the citizenry, and so I would go to residential first to make sure that those issues are accounted for before I would commercial.
Okay, what's your feeling?
I think I agree with Mike, yeah. I don't know what requirements or rules are in place regarding commercial lighting. Are there many? I mean, it would seem to me that a lot of the companies like Kroger, they would have corporate guidelines.
So, yeah, typically if somebody's going to light up your parking lot, meaning like Smith's comes in or Kroger or whatever, and they want to do a lighting plan, then we require a lighting plan with a photometric so that we can make sure that it doesn't just the brightest and, you know, all the different gas stations, all those we require.
You know, we have one on Maverick.
Yep. So we make sure that it doesn't spill out. Any lighting that's on the property line or any on the building that's shining back towards the residents, we make sure that they're shielded. And then, of course, when it's done and inspected, we make sure that those are in place.
And how do those regulations come to be? Because of what other cities have done?
Probably complaints over time, right? If somebody has put in a light that shines directly into somebody's backyard, they're gonna call the city and say, that's, and we'll make that. If there was no ordinance, then over time, we've probably created an ordinance to make that. No, it probably match some other cities as well. So, yeah, the city.
Well, we talk about lumens now. One of the things that seems to me that has been put into place in recent times is the bright signs. Sensitive universe, those are real.
And that's signage is separate. That
Yeah,
would be
I understand that.
another category
Yeah.
to deal
Just to
with.
answer that briefly, we do have a maximum illumination on signs.
Yeah,
So that, you know, if somebody is out of compliance and they're really, really bright,
Yeah.
we will go and have them do a test with a net gun or whatever and to show us what that brightness is and make them turn it down to whatever it is, which is 0.3 lumens, I believe, in the ordinance. So, I mean, we don't have the magic wand to go out and point a gun at it yet. We make it one.
That'd be nice.
So.
But there are technology out there that you can point it at
I wanna give Murray,
or something and say, this is how bright it is.
really good.
yeah, we just have a couple minutes and I want Murray and Jerry to have an opportunity. What are your thoughts? Do you want to continue talking about lighting? And do you have a preference if we start with like commercial or residential or where we begin?
I think we have bigger problems to work on,
Okay.
like traffic. There's crazy aspect areas where we need to work on lighting. Mostly commercial.
Now I'm rethinking what I was gonna say.
So what were you gonna say?
Well,
No.
I thought, yeah, this is significant. I think we need to have safety, but not overdo it. There's a fine line between,
When I go to the neighborhood meetings, I think there are three things that always come up. And then this order of traffic, lighting, and noise. Especially when they're wanting to put up commercial
Mm-hmm.
close to residential. Those three items always come up.
so for me, I think that businesses need to be good neighbors of neighbors. So that's where I would start. Let's make sure our businesses are good neighbors of neighbors and so you know, we love businesses and we don't want to change that. So I would probably, I'm guessing there's more that can be done with businesses than personal neighbors. I like the fact that Orem has lights in neighborhoods now. They didn't used to. I lived here in the 90s. I used to think of lighting in Orem was abhorrent. You know, It's horrible, so I think we made good improvements, so. I guess I can go either way, but
Personally, I lean more commercial,
yeah.
just because I think there's a larger bang for our buck in trying to clean up some of that, and I think the impact directly on the residents around it, it could benefit them quite a bit. And yeah, as we all know, State Street and University Park are bright. And
Well, what we'll do is try and capture these comments. Really, I think it's helpful to define the goals up front like you're doing. And then we can also survey where we're at. And then we can see where that difference is between the goals and where the ordinances and real conditions are at. And then from there, we can start saying, well, okay, we need to tweak this and that, adjust that ordinance. So when I come back next time, we'll focus on just getting your stamp of approval on goals and direction. And also surveying that against where we're at ordinance wise and maybe some key other issues. Okay?
thank you.
So is there a cost element that comes into play? You know, if you, certain types of lighting are maybe considerably more expensive than others, so.
And that's something we can address in the
So what's
process. Yeah, as we get into the tactics and the individual methods to try and achieve goals,
Yeah.
we can definitely address the cost issues. And also, you know, who's gonna do what, when, you know, a lot of this, because things are already built out, we're gonna be non-conforming. It's not like we're gonna go in and say, you gotta retrofit all your lights for no reason. But if they have a substantial addition or they're redeveloping, those would be opportunities that the new standards could be more effectively put in place. So again, that's why I said it's a multi-decade sort of initiative on tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Very interesting.
That's Gary's turn.
Yeah. You guys have a Genie note?
There's a deeper conversation.
Still some- So I'm trying to address the goals. Alright.
These people.
Let's see. Okay, I'll just leave it like this because we may jump around. Okay, so last time we talked about meetings. And so we talked about the chair starting a meeting and declaring conflicts, doing those types of things. Then in the meetings, staff gives their presentation, we have the discussion, and now we've had public comment if it's a legislative item. Now comes time for a motion. And that's always the fun part. Sometimes it's fairly easy. It's not a very controversial issue. There's really no need for much discussion on it. It may be an administrative item like a approval of a plat. The real question, if you remember, on administrative items is, does it comply with the law? If it does, we must approve it. We have to approve it. We have no discretion to turn it down. Our discretion is very limited and narrow. And so oftentimes it's, okay, we've got this. A lot of the questions or comments that may come up about the item don't really impact whether we would approve it or not. And so on something like that, you may have a main motion. That would be on administrative item. I move that we approve the preliminary plat. Okay, and then there's a second, then there's discussion, and you go forward. On a legislative item, those can typically get more complicated. So on administrative item, what we're really doing most of the time is making a motion, and it's either, if it complies with code, we make a motion to approve.
Why would it even be a consideration if it if it complies with everything, why would we have to bless it, as it were? Why wouldn't it just be approved and you move on?
Because the state law says staff can approve administrative items. Many communities have come in and decided they want to have their planning commission approve an administrative item. So for instance, building permits do not come to you, right? A building permit is issued by the building department. You come in, hey, I want to build an addition to my house. You provide plans, you provide everything that's required by code. They look at it and go, yep, it complies with code. We issue the permit. On administrative items, we could do that. But the Orem City Code has said, let's have planning commission do this. And we've talked about this before, that can give people a false impression. Because often on an administrative item, people will come to a meeting. And when it's an administrative item, it's a public hearing. Remember, a public hearing is when the public's involved. It's a public meeting, they can come, they can see it. But it's a public meeting is not a public hearing. A public hearing is when the public has the right to comment. And on administrative items, they do not have the right to comment. But often, if there's 30 people in the audience on an administrative item, it's hard to say, well, I know you got off work early and you came down here, but we're not going to let you talk. And so we do that. That's really hard to do. So you let them talk. And it's like, if you approve this subdivision, this plat, children will die. Have to do that.
Yes.
You know, children will die somehow. And if you approve it, because more likely you have to, then they think, oh, you didn't listen to me. I came and I talked. So that's administrative. Administrative, the motions are really either it complies with code or it doesn't. Or occasionally it may be, I move that we approve this if they fix this, rather than a 9-foot setback, it needs to be 10 feet. You approve it with a condition. But they're very straightforward. Now we're talking legislative. And legislative, broad discretion. And you are a recommending body to the municipal council. They make the final decision. And so now you come in and now it's, I move that we recommend to the municipal council ABC, whatever it is. And that can be, those can be very difficult motions to get our arms around. A good example of that would be, somebody help me because I want to say Sherwood Forest, and I know it's not.
Sherwood Haven.
Sherwood Haven, I am so sorry, it's
I'm the same way.
It's a mental block I have. Sherwood Haven. That was a pretty complicated, what do we do, how do we do it, you know, one to get our arms around. And so that's when motions can be hard. So typically what happens is, as the chair, she runs the meeting on a legislative item, staff will give their presentation, the applicant will give a presentation, you'll open it up to public comment, you'll close the public comment, you'll allow the applicant to, since they have the burden of persuasion, to go last, then you'll close it and have discussion. And sometimes you need to have discussion before you make a motion. And sometimes somebody can make a motion. So what happens is you make a main motion. I move that we recommend to the municipal council ABC. And then we look around to see, is there a second on that motion? And there may not be. And if there is no second, that motion fails. Now, the chair can continue and go, okay, that motion failed. Is there another motion? Does somebody else want to make a motion? And somebody else can make a motion. Now, you can make a motion and have it seconded and then actually vote against your own motion. And sometimes people will make a motion just to get the ball rolling. And that's okay to do. Because sometimes it's hard in a commission or a committee to get the ball rolling. And so you'll make a motion, you'll have a second, and then we have discussion.
And that applies to seconding as well.
Yes.
Like people don't, just because you second it doesn't mean you're in favor of what the person who made the motion said. Or you're gonna vote one way or another. It's just, are you willing to let it get going?
Yeah, great point. Because if it dies for lack of a second, you may want to second it, even if you intend to vote against it, just to have some discussion.
So you're saying unless any motion is seconded, it fails?
It fails.
Now, is that what we heard the other day, Mike, in our meeting? They said it didn't have to have a second motion. We were at the Republican Central Committee meeting, and they said that a motion did not need to have a second. Am I correct? You were at the same meeting.
They have those Republicans call me.
Well, that's
Robert's,
They do
Robert's rules of order.
They should have a second.
you should have a second.
According to what they told us, a second is not required, but that's our.
Well, we're gonna stop
we
the
talked
political
about that.
discussion.
That is
for
on the meeting, approval of the meeting minutes.
approval of the meeting minutes, yeah.
Oh, only that,
And
okay.
so our procedure is unless there's dissent,
Okay.
it doesn't require a second.
It's really like a consent agenda.
Gotcha.
And that's something we could talk about in the future is, do we want to have a consent agenda on, say, some routine administrative items? There may be 4 items on it. These are the consent agenda. Anybody want to take one of these items off? If not, a motion to approve the consent agenda. You may approve 4 motions in one 20-second period. Okay, all right, so once there's a motion and a second, the chair, we need about 5 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the chair restates it, because sometimes it can get a little complicated. And so it's good to have the chair restate the motion. Okay. Gary moved that we recommend to the municipal council ABC. And then the good thing about that is it gives you, oh, no, that's not what I said. Oh, did I say that? I didn't mean that. I meant ABD, so everybody's clear on what the exact motion is, because that's important to keep in mind. Then we open debate and the chair runs the debate. Now, typically when you make a motion and it's been seconded, the chair would come to me and say, Gary, you made the motion. Do you want to discuss the motion? And I can tell you, I can advocate for it. I can tell you why I did it. I can tell you what I'm thinking. And then we typically with the chair would go around the room in some orderly fashion, clockwise or counterclockwise on a, April Fool's Day or something, to allow everybody an opportunity to comment. Okay? And typically, each member is invited to speak. Generally, the general rule is you don't speak twice unless everybody's had an opportunity to speak who wanted to speak. And that way, we're giving everybody a fair opportunity. As a commission, you're trying to honor and respect the will of the majority, but at the same time, allow minority voices an opportunity to be heard on their position. And then often it's like, hey, Gary, it was your motion. Do you have any last things to say? I do that. And then we call for a vote on the main motion. So the chair, okay, I call the question, and now we're going to vote. Okay. So now that's kind of in a normal, easy procedure. So let's say I make a motion, I move that ABC, we have a second, and through the discussion, it's clear that there are some problems with this motion. We can have a secondary motion. And the secondary motion helps take care of the main motion. And they can be made at any time during our discussion after the main motion's been seconded. And that could be, Gary, would you accept an amendment or a substitute motion? You moved A, B, C. I think we should do X, Y, Z. They're very similar but slightly different. Would you accept that as a substitute motion? And so we can have a substitute motion with a second in discussion. And so, well, if you vote on the substitute motion, then that does away with the main motion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And also during your discussion of the main motion, you can, this is a really complicated decision. I don't know that I'm ready to make a recommendation. I need some more information. I move that we continue this item. And so a continuation or refer back to staff to come back at the next meeting with specific answers to some things can interrupt that main motion and can happen. And so we deal with them in order. So you have your main motion, a secondary motion may be layered on top, and then maybe there's a motion to continue on that. You deal with the motion to continue, then you deal with the secondary motion, and then you're back to the main motion if necessary. Does that make sense? It should be as clear as mud to me right now after my explanation.
Well, you just get it in focus and then you take it out of focus slightly, so.
Well, say 1 or 2. I should have been an optometrist. 2 or 3.
That's what it is. Just solid. I can relate to that.
Main motion or secondary motion, secondary motion or motion to continue. So that's what we're kind of do, and we'll keep tackling this. Just remember this in the meeting. Would a disinterested person observing what's going on, doesn't have a dog in the hunt, isn't involved, but just there observing what's going on and how the planning commission has handled the meeting, would they feel and believe that people were treated fairly and according to law? That's kind of an overarching, and sometimes you do it even if the rules, procedure, or the law allows you to do something, sometimes you don't, and maybe you give somebody an extra chance to talk or something like that, just because it looks or feels fair. And you can modify the rules as you go along to add further confusion. So, and feel free to, in the middle of the meeting, say, Gary, you've completely confused us. We had this all straightened before you came. So untable this for us or help us untangle it. That's better.
All right, we're gonna adjourn to the other room.
I was gonna say, what if the answer to that question is they were too confused to answer any question? They have no idea to the spirit of this is all the promotions and the call to question.
I know.
Gary's done his job. Yes. My dad.
Okay, I call this meeting to order at 4:32. And sorry, we're getting used to new procedures. So give me half a second. So we want to acknowledge that Helena Kleinman, Commissioner, is not here today, and Haysam Sakar will be joining us via Zoom. And then we will start with you're not, Murray's over there. We'll start with an invocation from Murray. Thank you.
Our kind Father in heaven, we are very grateful to be here today and to have the opportunity to discuss the affairs of the city of Orem. We're grateful for the country where we live, for the freedoms we enjoy, for the opportunities that we have, and particularly to be here in Orem. And we ask you to bless our city officials and those who work here with safety and love and care. We pray that as we go about the Planning Commission business, that we'll be guided and directed and take into account all of the applicable laws and needs and residents of the city of Orem, and please bless us as we do so. And we pray for a spirit of love and cooperation in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, we will begin with item 3.1, a preliminary plat, approving the preliminary plat of Grapevine Court located generally at 196 South, 800 East in the R8 zone. If you'd like to begin the presentation.
All right, so this shows you the location of the lot that we're talking about. And as you can see, it is quite large. You can, judging from the lots to the north and to the west. It's in the R8 zone, which is a single-family residential zone. This is the plat, the preliminary plat, showing this one large lot will be subdivided into 3 lots. And we'll also have 2 flag lots. The lot up front will have access off of 800 East, and the 2 lots behind will have a flag lot. Each of the lots meet the minimum requirements of the R8 zone. And also in that middle lot, there is an existing home with an existing garage. Those will remain. Any other accessory building and concrete will be removed. This is what it looks like from the street. And did you have any questions?
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, what's with these flag lots? How do they get access to? Will there be right of ways or?
So if you look on the south end, you'll see a 20-foot driveway that will take it all the way back. There's also a hammer. I don't think it's called a hammerhead. There's a turnaround for fire.
So that's the gray shaded area. Is that right?
Yeah, well, most of the gray shaded, the lighter gray area, that kind of hashed, that's a lot of concrete that will be removed. Because that's for the existing outbuildings that they have, and those will be removed. Only that large garage in the back will remain in the existing house.
And how large are the various lots?
Let's see if we can, I know they're over. So lot 3 is 11,362. Lot 2 is 15,000 square feet, and lot 1 is 10,000.
Okay, I see it.
So in the 2 flag lots, they have to be 125% of the zone. So that would be a minimum of 10,000 square feet in the R8 zone. So the front lot only has to be 8,000 square feet, but lots 2 and 3 would have to be at least 10,000 square feet, and they meet those requirements.
Will that back lot with the triangular shape and the setback still be able to build this. I mean, I guess you could put
It'll
any
be a
size house.
rather interesting home,
It's going to be a unique little house there.
but it meets the lot size and the setback, so I'm kind of curious to see what they build there myself.
Yeah. Any other questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant here and would they like to come forward and say something? You can sit next to, or either mic works. Yeah.
Just turn off. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. We're so grateful for the time you guys have spent. We heard that Orem was professional when you go to do this kind of work. We found that it really is true. And it went fast, and your engineers and the admin people treated us like we were good valued residents. So we appreciate that. The property will be split into 3, and I'll have a daughter on each side. And they're both here with their families. As we go into middle age, you know, we need all that help we can get. But so it's a family situation that we're putting together. And we look forward to being able to start that in the late spring, summertime, if it's all passed and approved.
The
thank you so
concern
much.
I have is, do these daughters get along with one another?
That's a good concern.
Well,
There's a house between them.
and there
I think
was a
that's
question
smart.
about the angle in the back. Heather would be the one that she's supposed to be building there, so she's designing if it goes okay. So
She's the creative one of the bunch.
she is, yeah. The other one's a principal at one of the schools in Provo. So we won't talk about Provo, okay.
Well,
But,
who's in charge of this whole operation?
my wife Kathy, right here in the middle. And it's actually, the property's under an LLC that's owned by her and my daughters. So, but that's our plans. We love it here, and we just hope to kind of improve that area.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
How long have you lived there?
6, 7 years. We moved in, yeah, we came back from Houston in 2011, and then we rented until we found a place that we liked. We were looking for some property, and that one came up, and Shower Hammers were the individual who lived there, ex-firemen and whatnot. But so we moved in then, and we've loved it. And there's grapevines, as you saw by the picture, on the fences all the way around it. Shower Hammond had that planted really. So we have a lot of Concord grapes, and we used to have, we'd raise like 100 bushel of Concord grapes there, and we had people come from clear down in Moab and whatever to buy them. So luckily I keep pruning them really close so we don't have all that work now.
Thank you.
That's one.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, then would anyone like to make a motion?
I move we approve the preliminary plat of Grapevine Court located generally at 196 South, 800 East in the R8 zone.
I second that motion.
Okay, Murray, this is my practice here. So Murray moved and, oh my gosh, Jim seconded the motion that we recommend and approve the preliminary plat for Grapevine Court. Any discussion, or are we ready to vote? Yeah. Haysom, do you have anything you want to add, or you can go
No.
first voting? Okay, do you want to vote?
Straightforward. Aye.
Okay, Jim?
Aye.
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 Okay, we have approved the preliminary plat of Grapevine Court located generally at 196 South, 800 East in the R8 zone. Yeah, congratulations. So item 4.1, review of the meeting minutes. Anything? They were fine. So I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay. Can I, vote.
Aye.
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 Haysom?
Aye.
Okay, meeting minutes are approved. Ryan, do you have anything?
Nothing this week, thank you.
Okay,
I move we adjourn the meeting.
that sounds great.
Second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at 4:41.
Whoa.
Thanks.
Very efficient. Good job.
I hope it wasn't our responsibility bringing you all out in this weather, but we do thank you very much.